Hello everyone and welcome back to Oxygen Not Included and to the colony of Dapper Dell. Now, before we get down to work in today's episode, let's decide on what kind of work that we're going to be doing. Now, the first thing that, well, it's not the first thing that's worrying me, but we're running low on water. Now, we're using water for a lot of different things. We're using it for our oxygen production, we're using it for our cooking, we're using it for our research. There are ways that we can cut that down, certainly in the cooking. We could stop producing the lice loaf, which takes 50 kilograms of water and 1,020 calories worth of meal lice to produce 1,700 calories worth of lice loaf at a quality terrible, that is zero quality. We could instead switch over to pickled meal. Now, that doesn't give us any calorie boost, but doesn't use up anything but meal lice, but is grisly. Our duplicants won't be happy with this. This will actively pull their morale down. Now, if we have a look at Duplicants Skills, at the moment, that isn't actually a problem for us. They don't need morale. They're all fairly happy as is, and they're not happy because of the food they're eating, because we're not giving them good food. So they would lose one morale point, which would bring them a little bit closer to their morale requirement, but it still wouldn't be putting them anywhere near the stress range. So I think we're going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and allow this to finish off, and then from that point onwards, we're going to be producing pickled meal. Forever. Go ahead. Make as much pickled meal as you can. I am so sorry for what I'm about to do to you guys. Now, the second thing that I'm concerned about, and in fact, this is kind of demonstrating it, is we're spending a lot of time just running on manual generators. We've got a lot of power in this space, and currently it's all being generated by people running on hamster wheels. I feel that is a little bit unfair. So one of the big things that I'd like to focus on is getting a power plant. Now, I don't want to build that inside the central part of our living space right now. For me, this is well, in many ways it's temporary, but for the time that we're using this is the living space, and generally the only things that should be here are industry, very light industry that is going to be used a lot, like the research and cooking, and also the creature comforts, the things necessary for our duplicants to live comfortably. So food and food production, I mean, we could move that out, and we probably will later, but for now, that isn't really generating heat or anything particularly worrisome for us. We've also got the lavatory setup over here. Now, there are a lot of other things that we can do over here as well. Now, thinking about that, just before I get too distracted, too late, I know, but one of the things that was suggested to me is we can just add more piping so that there's more pipe behind our sieve, so that we have more of a backup rather than funneling it out here, which is effectively what we're doing. There are other things that we're going to be able to do later on, and actually have like liquid reservoirs, building type reservoirs, but for the time being it's a very, very simple fix for us to just go along these lines, plop that in there, and then we'll have a pipe running down, then up. And once that's done, we'll take away the other pipe, and that will give us a little bit more pipe behind the water sieve. Eventually we might take that away. We'll see how that goes, but that's something very simple that our duplicants can get working on. Let me set all of that up there. And furthermore, I'm actually rethinking my decision to have this over here. I could just store it over there. It would be near enough. Yeah, let's deconstruct this. There's no real reason to have it here, and that would also make it a little bit easier for me later on to move the water sieve across and put a liquid reservoir in here, which is only a 2-wide structure. So yeah, go ahead and deconstruct this building and then just move the filtration medium elsewhere. Right, there we go. That should be good for now. That'll resolve one problem once all of that is built. But back to the issue of power. We're going to go into research, because right now we don't actually have much in the way of power production. In fact, we don't have any other options for power production. The first thing we're going to go for is the coal generator and the wood burner. We're not growing any trees. Later on, I really would like to, but I won't be using them in a wood burner. I would prefer to turn them into ethanol and then use that in a petroleum generator. Well, you know, it's a liquid fuel generator. Let's call it that to avoid ambiguity. But we'll go for a coal generator. Now, this by itself, we could use straight away, but I'm going to hold off, because there are a couple of other things that I would like. I want this to be efficient. I don't want to just be burning off coal. I'll go over why that is a concern later, but we'll need this regardless, because I want the heavy watt wire to allow me to set up, well, the transformer and the heavy watt wire. First and foremost, because I'm probably going to have more than one coal generator, and that would overload any regular circuit that they were all connected to. It would be too much power being pushed through the wires, and they would burn out. So we want a wire that can carry a much, much greater charge. Furthermore, the transformers will allow me to isolate power networks and deliver from the much larger, potentially 20k watts. We can pull that down to 1000 watt maximums so that a smaller network isn't going to burn out. But we'll get to that once the research is done. Until then, though, I'm going to need to do a lot of excavating around here to prepare for a power plant. I am so sorry, Zangiri. I'm so sorry, Detour. Here we go. The system should now be functioning. Again, the bridge is going to take priority, so all of this polluted water should immediately take this route instead of going down there until this whole pipe is backed up. And at that point, any leftovers will take this route. So eventually that will happen, and we'll have a good amount of backup water in the system should we need it. Though honestly, this system is more or less as good as done now. We're not going to tap into the water on this system. That is, personally, I think that's the way that you end up running out of water at some really important moment. So for all intents and purposes, this system is never going to be anything less than full. Eventually it'll start running off again. If we need water from this system elsewhere, we'll build another water sieve and we will pipe out to that separately, and we probably will do eventually. Also, awesome, coal generator, wood burner, fantastic. On to the next one. And before we go anywhere else, colony achievement. Let's see what we've got. We have got bed and bath. Have at least one toilet in the colony and a bed for every duplicant. Oh, well, you know, that's quite nice. We've had that one for ages, though. My lord. Okay, onwards with the digging. Now, while research is continuing, we can have a think about some of the other problems that we're facing. Right now, we're feeding all of our duplicants pickled lice. That's not tenable. That's going to drive them slowly insane. So we can have a look at other options. Now, we have got other options. We've got pips, we've got hatches, we've got drecklets, and I know it's not a very nice thought, but nevertheless, they are basically walking meat. And meat that isn't walking anywhere except into the bellies of my duplicants is a wasted opportunity. Also, having farms will allow us to farm the critters for other resources as well. While they're alive, hatches, when they consume things, will poop out coal. Dracos will produce reed fiber or indeed plastic. Pips don't really produce anything, but they have special abilities that may be worth us trying to herd them in the future. Now, there are certain things to consider with the animals. There are different variants, obviously. The glossy Dracos produce plastic instead of reed fiber. Hatches have several. Now, the basic one can more or less eat anything and will produce 50% of that as coal, 50% of its mass. Sage hatches, however, can eat only organics or indeed food, but they will turn 100% of that mass into coal, which does beg the question, what nutrients are they actually extracting out of it? How are they powering themselves off it if they're turning all of it into coal? We're probably worth not asking that question. But they could even eat the pickled meal if we particularly wanted to. It's just there's no real point. We may as well just give them, you know, plenty of meal lice, and they can eat as much of that as they want and then produce coal out of it. Because we are going to have an excess of meal lice. Not only that, but they can consume polluted dirt, something which we might not actually want around in the colony, and they will turn that straight up from polluted dirt into coal, which is pretty amazing because the process of that goes from duplicants waste products to food for a sage hatch to coal to use in a coal generator. Now, I don't know how much worth there is. I'm not sure what the numbers would be involved in trying to get a farm of hatches that could provide for a constantly running coal generator. Probably not worth it, but may still be worth it for the meat. Then you've got the other variants, ones that eat largely rocks or metals, and the ones that poop out refined metals. There's lots of reasons to farm critters. You can get almost all of the mid to late game resources through farming rather than through extraction, and in the terms of farming, generally you're going to get it for less power and less heat. It's just going to take more time. Now, nothing is more true than that that encompasses that more than the Draco, because the Draco first and foremost doesn't eat the products of plants, it eats the plants themselves. They'll eat growth percentage out of a growing plant. Now, the regular Draco will produce reed fibers, and the gloss Draco will produce plastic, but all of them will produce phosphorite, which is something we're going to need as a fertilizer for some plants. Now, I mentioned the fertilizer for plants specifically because almost all plants require it. So they're not free. You don't just plant one and then never have to tend it before you can harvest it. You can do that with wild plants, but they take twice as long to grow, which is where the pip comes in, incidentally. But nevertheless, there is one exception to this, and that is the Balm Lily. The Balm Lily is a medicinal plant. You can't use it for food anyway, but once you've planted it, you don't need to do anything else but make sure that it is bathed in chlorine gas. That's all it needs to grow. So you could just feed your Dracos Balm Lilies, never having to fertilize them, and so you're just getting free phosphorite and occasional free meat or free eggs as a direct result. Well, in return for a little bit of duplicant labor, because you would need to groom them and generally care for them. You would not necessarily get the byproduct, though. You wouldn't necessarily get the reed fiber or the plastic unless the Draco spends a lot of its time in hydrogen, because that's the only time that it regrows its fur, if you will. So we have got options there. And whilst we're waiting on the research for our power plant, I think that's an option that we should look into. We've got Balm Lilies down here. We've got chlorine. Chlorine is a heavy gas. In fact, I think of the gases you're likely to encounter, only CO2 is heavier. So we can make a chlorine pit with Balm Lilies growing in it, and then have an oxygen top, so our duplicants can happily go in there and groom the Dracos and feed the Dracos and shear them, etc., without having to worry about breathing in chlorine. We could make a hydrogen capturing cap where we would pump some hydrogen in occasionally, so that the Dracos would also be shearable. That is definitely something we can do. So let's have a think of where we want to do this. We would want a stable. Now, it would account for, I think it's 96 tiles, so if we build it 10 tall, and 9 wide, then we're near as damn it, and then we'd have an extra 6 to play with. So this gives us 5, and then another 5, there we go, and then 5 and another 5. So this would be the size of our stable, more or less. We could have a little bit more room if we wanted to, or we could narrow it and do all sorts of things along those lines to play around with this space. For example, if we only had it 8 tall, then we could just, it would fit very neatly into a space. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prepare a stable room for our Dracos, including a chlorine pit where we can grow plenty of Balm Lilies. I shall bring you back shortly. Okay, whilst we're expanding out this area, now this is going to be slightly larger than a stable room can accommodate by a few blocks, so I've got a little bit of room to decide on some additional features. But the largest size of a stable is 96 tiles, and we do want a stable so that we can use the grooming station. That is how you turn a wild critter into a tame critter and massively increase their metabolism and also the likelihood of them having an egg. Otherwise, a wild critter who isn't abused, who isn't basically glum all the time, will have exactly 1 child in its lifetime. So the population will remain stable as long as they're not made to be unhappy. Otherwise, you will have a decreasing population, and eventually you might run out of the ability to have any of that critter around. But while we're waiting for more research to be done, I think we should probably look at transplanting this water from over here, which shouldn't be Jeremy. No, it isn't. Over here instead. So we're going to set up a little pumping station down here. We're going to want a ladder as well, and also I need to increase the priority of these things, so let's just make sure that that's happening. There we go. And we are going to want to run a pipe all the way up. We'll probably just run it along the roof. Actually, it doesn't matter too much where we run it over here, though running it in here is going to be a problem unless I deliver it. Perhaps that I may be able to build this through the kind of almost floor of the pump, in which case that would work well for us. We'll also need to hook it up to the energy grid as well. This shouldn't overload our system as it is, but it is going to mean that whoever's running on this hamster wheel, oh, you're going to have your work cut out for you. In fact, let's increase the priority here by a bit more than that. Let's go for 7s across the board. There we go. That should be a bit better. There we go. We are moving water between the two, between the two lakes, effectively, because this really isn't a reservoir. It's temporary at the very, very best. We're also beginning construction of the room over here, which is going quite well. Now, there is quite a lot of polluted oxygen in there. Later on, we're going to want to be purifying this because it's not germy oxygen. It's just not very nice oxygen to breathe. And that is largely because of the evaporation of the polluted water. Thankfully, once again, it's not germy. It's just not nice. So, my duplicants can live with that. In terms of research, we have completed the advanced power regulation. Now, this is a big step, but it's not the last step. In fact, we've got about 3 or 4 other steps before we can set up our power plant the way we want. The next part we're going to need is the smart battery, which is going to allow us to well, as the name implies, use smart to dictate when things are running and when they're not. The smart battery basically sends a signal on parameters that we can set based on its charge, which is going to be very important. We are going to need automation, and with automation, there's actually going to be a lot of other things that we're going to want as well. But before we can get to any of those, building the smart battery or the automation, the last thing we're going to need is brute force refinement. We are going to start needing refined metals for our constructions. No more can we just build things out of ore. We're going to need metal for it. Refined metal, specifically. Now, we have got some skills, and at risk of the grisly meals kind of mounting, let's have a look if we can spend some of these. Amira. Well, as it happens, we're going to need someone who can do animal husbandry. So, there you go. It's not exactly something you're super happy about, but I'm hopeful that it'll grow on you. There you go. You're going to get a ranching hat. We've also got Travis. I could give you carrying, or I could go for the super hard digging. Diamond and obsidian would be really, really nice to have. On that note, over here, we have a bit of an interesting thing. We have the neutronium. Now that is, despite what it says, where I believe it says it needs like super hard digging or something. Oh no, actually in there it says it can't be mined. Very well. It's basically, you can't break it. It is beyond breakable. I wonder where it was that I thought it said that you could dig it. At any rate, you can't dig it. It's spawned by the game, and it is effectively permanent. On top of this, there is some sort of volcano or vent or geyser of some sort. To find out what that is, we're going to have to dig into it. And that means we have to get past raw obsidian. So, I think it is time for us to go ahead and give Travis the super duper hard digging. There you go. And you get the super duper hard digging hat. In fact, Detour, you get... Oh no, you're only on hard digging right now. I'm sorry. Sorry for getting your hopes up there. However, you should have a new hat. Yes, field research hat for you, Zangiri. Enjoy. But as far as morale is going, we're doing okay. It's not a big issue for us right now. We will continue to dig down here, though, around about there should do, and then we'll get inside. Again, we're going to keep that lip there, and we will see how all of that goes. Now, as we get more and more automation going, we're going to be able to do some really, really smart things. One of the big things is we're going to probably be able to automate a lot of stuff to do with our ranch over here. Bad stuff. I mean, depending on who you ask. Bad stuff for the animals, good stuff for the duplicants. Because, you know, ranching animals is hard work. It takes a lot of duplicant man hours. And so maybe we want to just automate some of those parts. Maybe our duplicants just don't have a stomach for the butchery element of ranching. So we'll take that stress off them using glorious automation. We will see. Okay, we've got a new printable, but this time we've got a snazzy suit. Increases the decor in a small area around the wearer. I think so, yes. Again, we're going to be waiting on getting any new duplicants for a little while. Now, who's going to get it? You know what, Zangiri? I think you deserve it. On that note, I believe Zangiri has a skill point. Yes, indeed you do. Now, this one is going to add a requirement of an extra 3 morale, but will eventually allow you to use the virtual planetarium. That's a very long way away for us, but I think it is probably worthwhile getting you that ability to do a little bit more research, a little bit quickly, a little bit faster rather. as for Detour, now Detour is having to pick up a lot of the slack with working the manual generator at the moment, so I think getting improved tinkering will be worth it, and eventually we'll want mechatronics engineering anyway, as this will allow us to build automated delivery systems. The bridge between Oxygen Not Included and Factorio grows a little bit narrower when you have automated delivery of materials running around the base. And it's never quite going to be that close. Oh, really? Did Zangiri already have it? No? Zangiri, are you going to get your suit? Zangiri. Please, Zangiri. I feel that you really should go grab your suit, mate. I think Zangiri may actually be having a wee. No, Zangiri is like, nah, don't need it, boss. All right then, I guess, but I'm going to leave it there for you. I don't think it ever goes bad. I don't think anything will try to eat it. None of the Draklets or the Pips are like moths, as far as I'm aware. Okay, there we go. We have got the smart batteries. Right, well, there is one last part needed for us to be able to start building this setup that we've mentioned. And where is... There we go. This was actually only basic research, so we should be able to get that fairly quickly. Now, as you can see over here, I have decided... Oh, really, Amira? I've decided to go ahead and expand out our farm a little bit where we can. Hopefully, someone will come along and dig that really quickly. Our diggers generally don't miss a beat when it comes to being able to dig anything because they really, really like doing that job. So there we are. But yeah, we're expanding out our farm more because I can than because I think we need to. But I do see that our calories are hovering at the 40k mark. Now that might... Oh, that is not quite what I wanted to do. Let me cancel that. Let's not do that, please. No, no, no. I do not want to uproot you, nor do I want to uproot... There we go. I think we're already doomed. Yeah, no. Did you uproot it? Is it still planted? It might still be planted, I'm not sure. But I do want to make sure that our calories are going up, not just steady, because that gives us a buffer for disaster, as one might imagine. Now, and since this will never get any benefit out of making this a greenhouse, I'm just going to let it be as big as I really need it to be. Work on the Draco range is coming along, though, but it's going to be a little while longer. Okay, we have just finished our research. All right, let's have a quick look. We have now got Smart Home, which has unlocked automation. Now, automation is going to be pretty important to us. The next research we're going to do while we're working on that, we've got a lot of polluted oxygen around our base, and also the carbon skimmer is going to come in handy. So we're going to set that up to be researched. But the main part of the process is now available to us. So let's go ahead and build out a little area for us to start setting things up. Now, I know there is slime here. I'm actually going to dig straight into it. Have we got this set up to accept slime? No, because we haven't yet dug slime. All right, well, now is the time for us to do it, just so it's not there making any slime lung. We're going to go ahead and dig that up and then store it in here. And it may be overpressurized. It's almost... Well, no, actually, I think it's probably too high of a pressure in this area for the slime to sublimate and thus push slime lung into the base. But we could also keep something out here. It's a bit of a difficult choice there. We are going to need a few things, though, and that is the Deodorizer in here, just to turn all of this polluted oxygen into breathable oxygen. Down here, we will probably need to make a CO2 trap, because it occurred to me that whilst the Dracos don't breathe out CO2, the Duplicants do. And when they're here, they are going to be breathing it out in small amounts, and eventually it's going to make its way down here because it is heavier than chlorine. And so we're going to need a way to remove that. So the carbon skimmer will be the big help there. As you can see, we've run out of water down here, but that's fine. We've topped up the reservoir a little bit, and that's the main part. Now, once we've got everything built over here, we're going to need to start having a look at refinement. The rock crusher is what we're going to want. Now, this thing puts out not too much heat, nothing like the later material refining, such as the kiln. The kiln, as you can imagine, puts out an awful lot of heat, and later on you can get a metal refinery which will forge the metal, which puts out an awful lot of heat. Now, we're gonna need this before we can get too much going in regards to automation, so we will build a very temporary little setup here just to run our the rock crusher itself. In fact, we may not even need that for very long. I could perhaps put that down here and keep more of this room available for our power plants, but for the time being, I think that's fine. Now, what we're going to want in terms of power, now, many of these we can build using just regular ore, so we're going to go ahead and lay down what we can while we can. Now, the power transformer will protect circuits from overloading by increasing or decreasing the power flow. Stores the power that it's fed into it. It can store up to 1000 joules, but it does not run off. It's unlike every other battery, it doesn't have a runoff, so you're not passively losing any charge that's stored. You could, I guess, build enough of them to act as batteries, but that would probably be hopelessly inefficient. Still, we are going to want to set these up in locations. So we've got discrete circuits. Now, I would say everything around here is on one circuit, so I'm going to build one of these right about there. And from there, we will have a wire leading all the way down, going through the walls so as not to upset anyone. Now, should we have a battery behind it? That is a reasonable question. Generally speaking, the less batteries you have in the setup, the less power you're wasting, because every battery wastes a bit. The smart battery wastes a lot less. So if we have a look at the batteries, the regular battery can store 10 kilojoules and will lose 1/10 of that every cycle. The jumbo battery can store 40 kilojoules and will lose only 2 kilojoules per cycle. So that's a reasonable saving there. The smart battery can store 20 kilojoules, so it's half as good at storing power as the jumbo battery, but it only has 400 joules a cycle runoff. It is significantly better, 1/5 as wasteful in terms of its power. So you're generally going to want the smart batteries where you can. That being said, we could go ahead and build room to have a smart battery behind this. The less batteries you have, like I said, the less need for additional storage. And outside of especially important systems, I'm going to say we're not going to give them dedicated storage. We'll have all of the batteries elsewhere because they do generate heat. So if we keep all of them out of here, the less we have around, the better. This one produces 1000 DTUs. This one produces 500, so we'd be half again as hot if we had a transformer and a battery combo. So we'll avoid it for now, I think. But that'll be one circuit. I guess we could have one circuit down here as well, just for our computers. It's not much of one, but we can always run it off to other things later as well. So we'll pop one down about here, right there, and we'll have a wire reaching down for that and hooking into this setup. Finally, we're going to want one over here for the power for our lavatories. So once again, we'll have another one here, and there's no particular reason why you can't have it run backwards. The only thing that is super important to pay attention to is the order of these arrows. This is the input, this is the output. If you wire up the wrong way, then you're either gonna burn out a circuit or you're just gonna get no power where you need it. So either possibility isn't ideal. But those are the three main circuits that we have going at the moment in the base. There we go. Research complete. The Deodorizer has been unlocked along with the carbon skimmer and the mechanical lock. Now, the mechanical lock basically allows doors to operate with power, which is actually pretty cool, but it's not something that we need to worry about for a little while. Now, that slime, I absolutely want swept at a high priority. In fact, this tile I want dug as a high priority as well, so that we can sweep the slime. We need to get that out of here as quickly as we possibly can. Make sure that slime is going to be brought down there, and just make sure that slime is never going to be brought over here. No, it shouldn't be. We will, however, have eggshells, though. Let's make sure that that is on the table there. That should all go fairly well. Our farm is complete, though. We've still got to isolate that little section over there. That shouldn't take too long. Now, in regards to the Deodorizer, it requires sand to filter polluted oxygen from the air, reducing disease spread. Basically, you put filtration medium in, it consumes oxygen, consumes filtration medium, will deposit clay and oxygen later on. Now, you do lose 10 grams of the air type, so your polluted oxygen, it isn't a perfect conversion. You are losing something whenever it happens. We definitely want one of those in there. We probably want one in the and outside the bedrooms, perhaps. Let's pop one there. We're going to have a couple of them around the colony. We've got a lot of polluted oxygen to get rid of, unfortunately. Polluted oxygen doesn't have any kind of different density to regular oxygen, so unfortunately for us, it's not going to sink down or rise up or anything like that, so we're just going to have to do it the brute force method and put lots of those in the place. Now, talking about sinking down or moving up, we do have the advantage here of having CO2 being heavier than chlorine. So we can go ahead and place in an airflow tile. Let's make sure this is a low priority build there. We'll have the airflow tile here, and then we'll have a carbon skimmer probably somewhere down here in just a little pocket room. Now, we could have a pneumatic door as well for the same reason. That would allow duplicants to get in there. Actually, that's probably a wise move. Let's have a pneumatic door in there for that purpose. There we go. So CO2 will be able to move across and can just gather in the lowest point, which will be down here, and that's where we'll put the carbon skimmer. But we've got a lot of work yet to do to get all of this done, and our duplicants take a very long time. And yes, I said that intentionally. Okay, we have our rock crusher up and running. Now, we don't have any power over here, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. We're going to set this up at level 6, but we're going to drop this right down to 15. Now, I would like a decent amount of copper ore converted. This will convert 100 kilograms of copper ore into 50 kilograms of copper and 50 kilograms of sand. It's not the best way to refine your metals because you lose so much of the actual metal, but it will do what it needs to do. So let's get 20 conversions going on there. Now, we're still waiting for a lot of the wiring to be built, so there's not too much more that we need to do there for now, but we are going to need to start placing down our heavy watt wire. And again, this is going to be using copper ore, so we can go ahead and do that now. What I would like to do is have these following along the ceiling like this and just branching down to connect where needed. Now, the difference between heavy watt wire and regular wire is regular wire has a max power of 1000 watts. Heavy watt wire has 20,000 watts. So, yeah, much better. But look at that. The decor is atrocious. Having this stuff visible to your duplicants really does not make them happy at all. Even this has a -5, but the cumulative effect of -25s, because you're going to tend to have them in quite large amounts. Actually, you know, we can't even run this in the wall, and that's one of the big problems. Heavy watt wire is too large to be concealed within a structure, and in fact, along that route, you can't even run it through this wall, so we're going to need the heavy watt joint plate right here to connect all of this up to the network. But that's why we want this out of the way at the top of the ladder over here, so that our duplicants don't have to look at it, basically. If we could have the exit be down here and have this just be an area that they have to access from the outside. In fact, that might not be a bad idea. No, I don't mind that idea at all. Let's go ahead and we'll remove this tile, I think. And we'll remove this one as well. In fact, that will give us an opportunity to use the mechanized airlock if we really want to. The difference between the manual airlock and the mechanized airlock is that both of them block liquid and gas. But this one can, I believe, have automation. So you can control this via automation. It's a more expensive lock, but when it's powered, it does actually open and close a lot faster. So sure, we'll pop that in line there. And we will go ahead and deconstruct this over here and just have some, we'll probably put airflow tile there, I'm thinking, to make sure that oxygen can move up into this little cavity over here. Let's take away that tile build order. No, we don't want that there. But what I do want is an airflow tile instead. There we go. And then eventually we'll pull this ladder all the way down. This will allow duplicants to get a fair bit of work over there done. But here we go, we're getting some power stocked up, and eventually we'll start getting copper. Now, we need the refined metals for automation. Now, we don't have any refined metals yet, so we can't turn her on. We can't even really make use of the automation display. Oh, really? Can pneumatic doors accept automation? I thought that was the whole point of the mechanized airlocks. Okay. Open and close more quickly than other types of door. I guess. When there's no power, it isn't a problem. You're not going to lock yourself in if you run out of energy. It'll work like a manual airlock. I guess the only benefit then is that it is faster. There we go, our first bit of refined copper. Now that isn't going to stretch very far at all, but it is a big step for the colony. Now, there we go, we've got a new colony, outdoor renovations. Construct a building outside the initial starting biome. Well, very well, that's not too bad, I suppose. We've also got a printable, not too bad. We'll take 3 hatches, yes, please and thank you. And we should have quite a few skills at this point. Okay, Obsidian Mist recently got improved carrying to Travis. Honestly, improved carrying for you as well. Then we're going to start working on possibly building, because right now Travis and Datua are our primary builders. And Speaker Blair, let's see where we're going with you. I could give you ranching as well, or I could give you better farming. No, we'll go with better farming. Sure, you can have that one. And Amira, I don't believe this would really help much, so we're going to go with, well, critter ranching for now, and then we'll grab improved farming next. But there we go, that should help out quite a lot. Now, we should have access to the automation screen. We can start hooking some things up, which is going to be absolutely amazing. One of the first things we could do is we could actually just demonstrate the way that this works. For example, we've got a duplicant motion sensor here. I could place this in the room, such that whenever someone's sat down, the light turns on. It's a rather expensive way of doing it, but because it takes 25, but it would be a funny way to demonstrate how it works. So, sure, all right then, let's go ahead and do it. Look, I can't say no to a little bit of automation. But as you can see, this is currently showing a red light. If we had a wire connected to that, the wire itself would be red as well, at least in the automation display, so it's very easy to see what kind of signal is being sent. But this will turn on and off. It doesn't need power to send the signal, which is actually pretty cool. Now, the reason why I'm putting it up in here is because this lamp is generating heat. It's not generating a whole lot of it, but it actually generates the same amount as a battery. So we're actually saying that, yeah, that's quite a lot of heat for something that I don't need to be active in there. Have we made more? Yes, we've made more. Fantastic. Now, each one of these wires does cost 5 copper. That's not a small amount, I suppose, but it's fine. Now, we don't actually want to go through the doorway for this, because if we do that, we'll activate the door. As soon as someone comes in here, it'll lock the door. It's not really what we want to do. I guess we could use a bridge to go over it. That would work, since it would avoid activating the signal. But once we've got this set up, then the lights will only turn on when there are actually duplicants in here who want to see the light. Lights, by the way, will give your duplicants a work bonus. That is not insignificant and is definitely worth you paying attention to. Looks like dinner time is here. Let's see. There we go. Turns on, turns off briefly when they step past. I mean, I could pull that one in a little bit more because they'll never realistically walk over here. But there we go. The light only comes on when they're actually in there. Does it help? Probably not. The light is probably not really necessary. It's not like this is a job that needs someone to be able to see. I don't know. Maybe it avoids them eating their fingers or something like that. I mean, they are duplicants at the end of the day. But we've also got a new printable. Let's have a look at you. Another snazzy suit. Wow. I think so, yes. Who's going to be the lucky owner of this one, then? Travis, you get to have this snazzy suit. Additionally, we've got 2 new colony achievements. Let's have a look at what we've got. We have got red light, green light, and the good egg. Hatch a new critter, morph from an egg. Marvelous. As it happens, our room is complete. Well, it's sort of complete. You will notice that the Deodorizers are doing a fantastic job. It's especially noticeable over here, which was full of polluted oxygen, but now is really, really not. So that's fantastic. When we're seeing far less polluted oxygen just drifting around the colony at this point, which I'm really, really happy with. We got a load over there. No, carbon dioxide. Now, the way that liquids, I think it works with liquids as well, but it certainly works with gases, is it has a kind of diagonal preference. Heavier gases will move to the bottom right, lighter gases will move to the top left. So that's why the carbon skimmer is over here, will be, as this is the most likely area that carbon will move into, or rather CO2. Now we are going to want a storage bin over here for a very specific resource, and that is bleached stone, which gives off chlorine. This is going to be one of the ways that we're going to make sure that this place has plenty of chlorine, because bleached stone sublimates into chlorine as it goes. Now we are also going to need to go and get ourselves some Balm Lilies. Unfortunately, it does mean that we're going to have to dig into this area, which is going to result in a lot of gases moving up. To that end, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tell my duplicants to just dig another ladder all the way up here and then tunnel out this little area so that any lighter than oxygen gases can move up and out of the way, and any of the heavier gases can move down, ideally. Hydrogen is the lightest of the gases. It's going to move straight up. Now, how much copper have we made? We have made enough at long last. Okay, so it's time to have a look. We are going to want at least one coal generator, almost certainly two, possibly three. But let's plan for two right now. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We're going to have one single smart battery, because I'm still not certain how I am going to wire this. We'll have a look. There are a couple of options. I have a plan, a cunning plan, maybe, probably not. We're going to build this out over at the top and hook it straight down. This smart battery is going to control the way that our coal generators work. We're going to have two there and there. We're not going to hook them up to anything yet, but I do want them there so I can see where their automation buttons are. They're in exactly the same place as regular wires. Okay, and because I'm finicky, I will run the... I'm going to put that on a fairly low priority. I'm going to run the automation wires through the ground just because I can. And then we're going to run these along there to connect them all up. Soon, very soon, we're going to be able to get rid of these silly little generators that are no doubt the bane of my dupe's existence at this point. We'll also run the heavy watt wire temporarily down here. There's not really much point in it, but that will be very useful for us later on. Now, very little else that we're going to be building is going to require refined copper for quite some time, so we're not going to have to worry about that one too much. But now that that's all planned out, we probably should start considering one other thing, and this is probably the last thing that we're going to be researching before we decide on the next project, and that is insulated tiles. I really want to be able to put an insulated barrier around the main part of our base, the main living area. So we're probably going to have some sort of door down here leading down into this area that will be isolated so that we can have a insulated tile cladding around the rest of the base. That should prevent the heat that is quite concentrated down here from drifting in, because the rest of our base currently is not doing too badly, especially as we turn off lights. On that note, though, as I was talking about the ability for lights to make duplicants' lives a little bit easier, let's go ahead and place down a light in there. We will also then place this, which hopefully will cover... I don't think it will. I think this would have been the best spot for a motion sensor. Do I really care? I do. The things I do. We will have this control the light, or rather both of them. And I know it's expensive, but we're going to do it anyway. So this light will only turn on when there are actually duplicants at these stations likely doing work. I could ensure that it's someone doing work rather than someone passing through by using... actually, we don't have access to it yet. It is something that we can research later. It is called a filter. A filter gate only lets a green signal through if the input has received a green signal for longer than a selected filter time. So if the motion sensor has detected a duplicant for more than the amount of time it takes them to run past, then it will send the green signal. So it'll only turn the light on if someone's actually working at the station. But here we are, the smart battery. Now, this is the part that is really, really important. Why we've got the smart battery over the other batteries. We can tell it to give a green signal after a certain point. red signal after a certain point and a green signal after a certain point. Now, the way that this works is once it starts sending a green signal, it doesn't stop until the condition for sending the red signal happens. So, for example, it'll send a red signal when the battery is more than 99% charged, and it'll send a green signal if the battery is less than 1% charged. So when the battery fully runs out, it'll send a green signal, and it'll keep doing so until it reaches 99%, at which point it'll start sending a red signal, and it'll keep doing so until it drops below 1%. So it's effectively hysteresis. It's a set-reset switch for all intents and purposes. I would actually like the coal generators to turn on when there's, to be honest, less than 5%. I don't want coal to be my primary power source. Less than 5%, and I want them to shut down the moment it's over 99. Now, if we hadn't waited for the smart battery and just used a regular battery, then we would still have the same level of control as we have with the battery, the manual generator, in that we could tell them to not turn the generator on until the battery was below a certain amount. But once you turn the generator on, it'll burn through all of its coal and then it'll turn off, and there's no way to turn it off without automation as far as I'm aware. So that's why this was so important, because once this thing is turned on, it's just going to be belting out 800 where are we? 600 watts at a rate of 1 kilo of coal per second until it runs out of coal. That's a very quick way of wasting your coal supplies. Okay, our first generator is ready. I have gone ahead and set up the fuel request threshold to 5%. It really doesn't matter. In fact, I could tell it to be anything. It'll request a delivery of coal if the batteries drop below 100%, because it really doesn't matter there. The main thing is that power is being supplied to the battery. This will be regulated by the battery itself. The same thing over here. I want coal delivered more or less straight away. The moment there's any room for coal, make sure that these are always full. But this is the problem, is if this was at 5% and the duplicant brought over a whopping great lump of coal, especially someone who could carry quite a lot, they might fill the entire chamber with coal. At that point, this generator is going to go run for quite some time, and it will potentially be wasting a lot of that precious coal energy, because nothing else is needing it, and energy doesn't back up like a gas or a liquid does. But there we go, we've got both of these running now, so this should be charging quite nicely. I am hopeful. Can we see its present charge? There we go. Power available is going up. Marvelous. There we are. It's currently sending its signal. Now, as soon as that gets to 99%, it'll shut it down, and both of these generators should stop. And we should see that in just a moment. There we go. And they're just sat there. Their coal is not being damaged in any way, and we've got plenty of power for the base. Okay, then, one of the last things that I wanted to do, and is that I was hinting at earlier, and why we've wired the heavy watt wire the way we have, rather than just moving straight across, is I want to try and make a battery backup system that doesn't charge all batteries simultaneously. Because, as we've mentioned many times now, the more batteries you have in the system, the more runoff you're using, the more you're wasting. Yes, it can store more, but it will waste more as a direct consequence of that. And I don't want to waste things. I'm not big into wasting energy. So if we were to add a few batteries into this system, that would be exactly what would happen. We would immediately start to waste these resources, and that's not good. Let's go ahead and make sure that we've got plenty more copper. I definitely don't want to be doing it forever, but let's go ahead and set something up. Now, we can have a power shut off. This is going to require just regular copper, and for all intents and purposes, this device will connect to the automation grid and will turn power on or off based on the signal that it's receiving. It does not affect circuitry preceding the switch, which is fine. So, for example, I could have this there, and if, for example, I had any kind of circuitry that was running over here, and I shut this off, well, as long as there was power in the battery, it would continue doing whatever it was doing. We are going to want to hook this up to the heavy watt wire, right down like that. Next up, we're going to want to connect this to the automation grid. So we are going to want the automation grid to move like this. When this battery emits, well, actually, no. We want to cancel that briefly. I almost made a silly there. You see, the problem is this sends a signal, a green signal, when it is positively charged. Sorry, when it's requesting charge. So when it's practically empty. We specifically only want charge to be supplied to this battery when this battery is full. So at that point, we're wasting resources. Go ahead and start charging this. Currently, this is set to on, I'm imagining. Let's have a quick look. It may be set to on. I honestly can't tell you. But we're going to need a new piece of research. And we've just actually finished the insulated tile. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and get that research. We need the NOT gate, which thankfully is the very next one that we're going to get in generic sensors. This will give us a weight plate. Something walks across it, it sends a signal. The gas element sensor, you put it in a room, it'll detect the gas on the tile. It doesn't work on pipes, it's the free floating gas. And the clock sensor, basic timer. We want the NOT gate so that we can change the signal that's coming off this into its opposite. So when this is reading red, that is, it's reached 99% or more, it would start displaying the red signal, which would open this up. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what's the point? Because this is going to stop generating power at that point. Well, that is a reasonable thing to say. We may want to have this as a dual battery system, one that controls the coal generators, and so it is set to the maximums, and the other which will allow charge to be sent to the batteries only when there's a reasonable amount. We can have quite a few of these in tandem, so yeah, that seems like a pretty good idea. Let's go ahead and do that. I love learning while I'm playing the games. It'll take us a little bit to do. Now, this one isn't sending a charge, so what I'm going to want is, yeah, this one stays at 99, but this one's top threshold, when it will start sending the green signal, will be 90%. If one battery hits 90%, I want you to start charging the other in the sequence. The low threshold should be... it should stop charging any of the batteries in the sequence only when it drops to 0. That way we can fully discharge all of the batteries that are behind this gate. If I had this at anything other than 0, say 5%, if this hit 5% first, then 5% of charge would be locked in here, because this would deactivate and would, in effect, stop this battery discharging any of its power into the grid. So we would always waste 5% of the charge. Not what I want to do. The whole point of this system is to prevent waste, not encourage it. So we want this battery to only send the green signal in this case, which will be converted into a red signal when this drops to less than 1%, so 0. At that point, this battery will also be at less than 1%, that is 0, and so it won't matter that it's disconnected from the grid. I know that might be a lot to take in all at once, and I do apologize when explaining anything like anything to do with automation or anything along those lines. There is always the risk that it's going to be a little bit of information overload without really being able to follow it with your eyes. But once we've got the system set up, it shouldn't be too hard to see it when it's actually working. Another snazzy suit? My lord, this is amazing. Everyone's going to be walking around in the best suits ever. Who's going to get this one? Who's working pretty hard? Amira, you're going to be doing a lot of hard work very, very soon. So, and very important work to boot. So let's get that one for you. Now, this little spot here. I could turn this into a little hatch stable, perhaps. It wouldn't be a very big stable. Or alternatively, I could turn this into some sort of incubation stable. Options. Okay, research is complete on the very last thing that we need for our automated power setup. I know I've been saying that for a while, but this really is true this time, I hope. Right, we want a NOT gate. Now, we should be able to just place this more or less anywhere we want, as long as it isn't over any of the automation buildings. So we could just place this right there. Now, the input is on this side. The output will be whatever the opposite of the input is. It's that simple. So when this is sending a red signal from being fully charged, even though, you know, at this point it isn't, that will open this gate, and then this one can accept charge or discharge, as the case will be much of the time. This one has slightly different parameters, so that this one will shut off the coal generators when it reaches a low threshold of 5%, or rather will request that the coal generators start producing when it reaches the threshold of 5%, and will start charging everything a little bit higher. Now, realistically speaking, I guess this should be much the same and have that all the way down at 1 so that we have all of these operating in the same way. So this one will have an opportunity to shut this off, because if we turn the coal generators back on when this hits 5%, when the charge here hits 5%, because realistically all the batteries will have the same charge, then the result will be that this one will never shut this one off. So that's not quite what we want. The last part of this puzzle is we just need to hook this up to the main grid. I'm going to go ahead and tell them to do that really quickly because I'm super impatient and I want to see this working. The cook stove over here doing its thing. We are already tapped into this area here, and we'll be seeing chlorine and, well, actually not so much chlorine, but we will be seeing hydrogen making its way up and hopefully getting trapped up there. Now, as soon as this is all done, then we will finally see if this battery charges the way it's meant to. There we go. And will you be able to do the second one? No? Ah, you scallywag. Will you be able to take care of it, Travis? I think Travis may, in fact, be able to do it. Thank you very much, Travis. You are the hero that we need. There we go. It should be hooked up now. I've already copied the settings across, because if we had many of these in tandem, then we would want it to daisy chain in exactly the same way. This battery won't start charging until this one is fully charged, so it'll be a bit of lag, and then it'll start charging up, and then it'll tell the next one to start charge only when it's fully charged, so on, so forth. This one will start at 90, this one will only do it at 99. So we will get a chance to see all of them fully set up. As we can see, this one is sending a negative signal right now, so this is open. It shouldn't take too much longer for this to completely discharge. In fact, we'll watch it a little bit. It's been wonderful having all of the duplicants being able to just move around and do their own thing. We're actually not using that much power. I'm a little bit shocked by how little power we use on the whole. Our calories are going up very nicely. In terms of oxygen, well, down here is horribly unbreathable, but that's quite a lot of carbon is building up. Now, these put out a lot of carbon dioxide, but they're only working some of the time. Now, there you go. You see, this is now shut down. So until this is most of the way charged, this one won't activate, but it should activate shortly, and there we go. This one is now charging, and actually, this one still managed to hit 99%. Maybe I should start charging it a little bit earlier then. Let's start charging it at 85, perhaps. There we go. That'll help out a little bit. This one will run out completely fairly soon. But there we are. That will work much the same way, no matter how many of these batteries we have daisy chains. So we can allow for having a very large buffer, but only waste as much as we absolutely have to. Which is, you know, quite a useful system. Honestly, 3 batteries with the little power that we're draining at the moment is probably massive overkill, but there we are. Let's go ahead and have a look at Duplicant Skills. Zangiri, well done you. You're doing very, very well indeed. I wouldn't mind Zangiri getting mechatronics operation as well, but you know what, Zangiri? You're doing a lot of good work, so I'm going to allow you to get some morale boosting skills down there. Data, I would like you to go for electrical engineering. This will allow you to use generator tuning, which will allow us to get a little bit more bang for buck out of our power plant in exchange for refined metals, which is something I would very much like to do. We'll actually be able to set up a power plant, which is something I think we probably should. But eventually we'll get mechatronics engineering, which will allow us to set up fully automated delivery systems. And last but certainly not least, Obsidia, where are we going to take you at this point? We could go for exosuit wearing, so you'd have additional athletics. Makes some sense. Sure. Okay, I'm going to give you exosuit wearing. This will allow you to run that little bit faster, but I think that's pretty much all we needed to do for power. Now, I did mention the tuning. If we have a look at rooms, and power plant enables the power control station use. Power control station would have to have the room a minimum of, a maximum of 96 tiles, which does kind of cut into what we can set up in here, but it would allow us to build generators, the power plant station, the power control station, which someone would deliver refined metals to, would make microchips, which they would then apply to the power plants, which for a certain amount of cycles then would run 50% more efficiently. They generate 50% more power for the same input of materials. So when, you know, our primary concern is not wasting stuff like coal, that is a very, very good idea. But, you know, you will be consuming additional rare refined metals, which when we're making it this way, which is already inefficient to begin with, probably not the best option. But I'm very, very happy that at this point, duplicants are no longer having to run on hamster wheels. So, yeah, I would say that was a resounding success. But with that, do take care, everyone.